Saving Private Ryan wasn't just another war movie, it was a brutal act of cinematic immersion that changed how audiences understood combat. What looked like flawless realism on screen was actually the result of chaos, exhaustion, and raw emotion behind the camera. From Steven Spielberg's punishing direction to Tom Hanks's physical collapse, this production pushed everyone to the edge. Today we reveal 20 shocking facts about Saving Private Ryan. The opening scene was real torture. The Omaha Beach sequence wasn't acting. Spielberg wanted authentic fear, so he dropped the cast into freezing Irish waters with real explosives detonating near them. Over 1,000 extras, mostly Irish Army reservists, endured days of relentless filming under storm conditions. Many vomited between takes, while others collapsed from exhaustion. Spielberg refused to use storyboards. He filmed handheld to mimic chaos. The sequence took nearly 4 weeks and cost over $11 million. Some veterans who watched the finished cut walked out of theaters shaking, claiming it triggered real flashbacks. It wasn't cinema. It was trauma turned into art. Tom Hanks barely survived the shoot. Tom Hanks wasn't just playing Captain Miller, he lived it. The constant explosions, gunfire, and 18-hour days left him dehydrated and feverish. He refused stunt doubles, insisting on crawling through sand, mud, and live squibs himself. Spielberg noticed Hanks' hands trembling, not as a character choice, but from fatigue. In one scene, his helmet slipped, and he accidentally hit his head on debris, yet kept acting. Hanks later said he didn't feel like he was performing, but surviving. The director later revealed that Hanks's exhaustion helped capture the broken leadership of a man holding his team together through pure willpower. Spielberg refused to accept a salary. Steven Spielberg declined his usual multi-million-dollar directing fee. He took no upfront payment, saying war shouldn't be a source of profit. Instead, he agreed to a percentage of the profits, which he later donated to veterans' charities. During production, he reportedly forbade any product placement or Hollywood glamour shots. His goal was raw realism. He even shot on desaturated film stock to strip away color and beauty from violence. Spielberg called it his personal tribute to his father, a World War II veteran. It wasn't about box office glory. It was about legacy, honor, and memory. The actors were sent to a brutal boot camp. Before filming began, the cast, including Matt Damon, Edward Burns, and Vin Diesel, underwent a week-long military boot camp led by retired Marine Captain Dale Dye. The conditions were miserable. They marched for miles in rain, ate cold rations, and slept outdoors. The drill sergeant purposely isolated Matt Damon so the others would resent him, just like in the story. By the end, the actors smelled bad, looked exhausted, and genuinely hated him. Spielberg called it psychological preparation. It worked. When the camera rolled, their frustration wasn't performance. It was real emotional fatigue born from deliberate suffering. The sound design was so real, it broke equipment. Spielberg demanded realism not just in visuals, but sound. The team recorded live gunfire from authentic World War II weapons. Microphones cracked under the decibel levels of explosions. Foley artists mixed layers of screams, mud squelches, and shrapnel whines to simulate sensory overload. In theaters, Dolby engineers had to create a new standard for volume balance because audiences were fainting during early screenings. Spielberg later admitted he wanted viewers to feel disoriented and shell-shocked like soldiers landing on Normandy. The result was so intense that some cinemas posted warnings outside saying the experience could be emotionally distressing. Matt Damon was cast to be hated. Spielberg purposely chose Matt Damon because he wasn't yet famous. He wanted the squad and the audience to resent saving a man they didn't know. But before filming ended, Damon won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting and became an overnight star. Spielberg was furious but refused to recast him. He said the irony made the story stronger. The other actors who had gone through boot camp together despised Damon's clean arrival on set. When they glared at him on screen, it wasn't acting. That real tension gave their performances a raw, unfiltered authenticity that no rehearsal could have created. The blood was too real for the studio. When the studio executives saw the first cut, they panicked. The blood spray, torn limbs, and screams were so graphic that some wanted Spielberg to tone it down to avoid an NC-17 rating. He refused. He argued that to sanitize war would be a lie. The prosthetics team used animal organs for realism, and camera operators wore raincoats because of the splatter. The Motion Picture Association nearly banned it, but Spielberg fought back, saying the brutality was essential to honor what soldiers actually endured. The scene remained untouched, a defiant act of truth against censorship. Veterans couldn't handle watching it. When Saving Private Ryan premiered, veterans associations were invited for private screenings. Many couldn't finish the film. Some cried uncontrollably. Others collapsed or had panic attacks in theaters. Spielberg's realism had gone beyond cinema. It became psychological warfare. The Veterans Affairs Office later issued warnings advising those with PTSD not to attend. One veteran said, "It's like being back there all over again." Spielberg wept when he heard that, realizing he had accidentally recreated trauma instead of just representing it. Yet many veterans later thanked him for showing the world what they had lived through. One scene nearly killed a crew member. During a rain-soaked battlefield sequence, a pyrotechnic misfire caused a massive explosion near the camera team. Debris flew across the set, and one operator was thrown backward. The footage survived, but the crew member suffered a concussion. Spielberg stopped filming for an entire day, shaken by the close call. Safety teams reviewed every setup afterward, but he refused to fake danger with CGI. He wanted chaos to be felt, not simulated. The final shot ironically became one of the most intense moments in the movie, capturing real fear from both cast and crew. The script was almost rewritten by the Pentagon. Before production, the Pentagon reviewed early drafts to ensure historical accuracy, but they objected to the emotional tone, claiming it portrayed American soldiers as too broken. Spielberg ignored them. He wanted imperfection men who cried, argued, and doubted the mission. Military advisors warned that it might damage recruitment campaigns, but Spielberg stood firm. He even included soldiers who abandoned orders or froze in terror. The Pentagon withdrew cooperation, forcing the crew to rent equipment from private collectors. It wasn't propaganda, it was honesty about the cost of war. Now comes fact number 10. But before that, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the next 10 facts dig even deeper into what really went wrong and what almost ended Spielberg's masterpiece forever. Steven Spielberg cried during filming. Even Spielberg, who had directed war scenes before, admitted this one broke him. During the Omaha Beach shoot, he reportedly wept behind the monitor watching extras collapse in mud while explosions tore the horizon. He later said it felt like filming a documentary on hell. Crew members described a heavy silence between takes where no one spoke. Some days Spielberg refused lunch breaks because resetting emotionally took too long. His realism wasn't spectacle, it was penance. He said he wanted audiences to lose the illusion of safety and feel what chaos does to the human spirit. Tom Sizemore filmed under drug testing. Tom Sizemore, who played Sergeant Horvath, was battling addiction during filming. Spielberg gave him a single rule. Every day before shooting, he would take a drug test. If he failed even once, he'd be replaced immediately. Sizemore agreed. The pressure worked. He stayed sober through the entire shoot, delivering one of his most powerful performances. Spielberg later admitted he believed in redemption as much as realism. Sizemore's visible strain and paranoia added grit to his character. What audiences didn't know was that behind every stoic line stood a man fighting for his own survival. Vin Diesel's breakout role almost didn't happen. Before Saving Private Ryan, Vin Diesel was unknown. Spielberg discovered him after watching his short film Strays. Impressed, he cast him as Private Caparzo. But studio executives objected, saying Diesel lacked experience. Spielberg ignored them. During filming, Diesel carried heavy gear through freezing mud without complaint. In one heartbreaking scene, his character dies clutching a letter to a child. Diesel insisted on doing the fall himself, injuring his shoulder. That moment became one of the most emotional deaths in the film and launched his career. It wasn't luck, it was pain made immortal. The cameras were intentionally damaged. Spielberg wanted the footage to look like wartime newsreels. So cinematographer Janusz Kaminski altered the cameras by removing protective lenses and scratching the film stock. He even hand-shook the camera to simulate chaos. The result was a gritty, desaturated look that confused lab technicians who thought the negatives were ruined. Spielberg called it controlled destruction. Every frame looked like historical footage captured in panic. The technique became legendary, redefining how realism could look on screen and inspiring an entire generation of war films to follow. The cast didn't know when explosions would happen. To get genuine fear, Spielberg never told the actors the exact timing of pyrotechnic blasts. They only had rough warnings through radio cues. When explosions erupted, actors screamed instinctively, not from direction but survival. Ed Burns later said it was the most frightening shoot of his career. One mistimed blast sent sand flying so close, it burned his neck. Spielberg apologized but refused to change the method. The unpredictability created raw reactions that no retake could reproduce. It wasn't method acting, it was immersion by shock. The film used real veterans as extras. Many of the background soldiers seen staggering, bleeding, or crying were not actors. They were real veterans. Spielberg invited former servicemen to appear in the battle scenes to add authenticity. Some were so moved they broke down during filming. One veteran reportedly dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, sobbing after a pyrotechnic blast. Spielberg halted production to comfort him. Those moments were left unrecorded out of respect, but the energy stayed on set. The cast said they could feel the weight of history in every take. These men weren't pretending, they were reliving the ghosts of their past. The D-Day landing took 4 weeks to film. The Omaha Beach sequence that opens the film took nearly a month to complete. Spielberg used over 1,000 extras, real military gear, and endless ammunition blanks. Each day started at dawn and ended after sunset, with the set rebuilt overnight due to tide damage. Mud swallowed props, cameras jammed, and explosives misfired. Some crew members quit, unable to handle the stress. Spielberg said he wanted the exhaustion to feel visible. By the final week, even Tom Hanks said it felt like he had lived through a war. The suffering wasn't faked, it was filmed. The ending wasn't the original plan. Originally, the film was supposed to end with a voiceover from Captain Miller explaining the cost of war, but Spielberg changed it last minute. He said silence would speak louder than words. The cemetery scene was shot only days before release. The decision created one of the most emotional conclusions in film history. The actor playing the elderly Ryan was moved to tears during filming because he had lost family in real battles. Spielberg believed endings shouldn't soothe, they should echo. Saving Private Ryan ended not with closure, but with a plea to remember. The movie changed how Hollywood filmed violence. Before Saving Private Ryan, battle scenes were clean choreographed and almost heroic. Spielberg shattered that illusion. His use of handheld cameras, natural lighting, and unflinching gore changed the language of war cinema. Directors from Ridley Scott to Catherine Bigelow later adopted his techniques. Even video games like Call of Duty borrowed his visual grammar. The film's realism made studios reconsider violence as spectacle. It wasn't about entertainment anymore. It was about empathy. Spielberg made horror look ordinary, and that truth was more disturbing than fiction. Tom Hanks's hand. Tremor was real. Throughout the movie, Captain Miller's hand trembles uncontrollably. Viewers thought it was a clever acting detail symbolizing stress. It wasn't. During production, Tom Hanks developed a real muscle tremor from exhaustion, dehydration, and adrenaline. Spielberg noticed and told him to keep it. The tremor became a haunting metaphor for leadership under collapse. Critics later called it one of cinema's greatest unscripted performances. Hanks said the hand never shook that way again after filming ended. It was as if the character left his body when the war was finally over. The ending scene was shown to soldiers before deployment. The U.S. Department of Defense used the final cemetery scene as a psychological screening tool before sending soldiers overseas. It wasn't propaganda, it was reflection. The goal was to remind recruits that duty comes with unbearable cost. Many cried silently in the dark. Spielberg never knew about this until years later. He said if his film helped even one soldier understand the weight of sacrifice, then every drop of sweat, blood, and sand was worth it. Saving Private Ryan wasn't just a movie, it was a wound reopened for the world to witness. Behind every explosion stood real fear. Behind every tear stood memory. Spielberg didn't film war to glorify it. He filmed it to make us remember what it takes to earn peace. If you learned something new from this deep dive, go ahead and subscribe because every great movie hides a battlefield behind its frame. And remember, some stories never end, they echo.